I now give the floor to Ms. Sivananthi Thanenthiran, Executive Director of Asia Pacific Resource and Research Center for Women in Malaysia.
Your Excellency, Mr. Sam Kutesa, President of the General Assembly, Your Excellency, the Presidents of Liberia and Turkey, Madam Pumzile, Executive Director of UN Women, Madam Helen Clark, UNDP Administrator, Excellencies, distinguished speakers and honorable members and delegates. I'm deeply honored to be invited to speak to this assembly on the issues I'm deeply passionate about and the issues which the organization that I work for has been championing for more than 20 years. I consider myself privileged to work alongside women's rights activists who every day go out and do their best and even do battle simply because we believe that we as women are equal human beings and equal citizens and endowed with equal rights before the law. All that I as a woman enjoy today were hard won by women before me, and I acknowledge their work, their sacrifices, and their dedication. I also acknowledge past leaders on the world stage who were present at the United Nations, and though coming from different contexts, were able to work together and forge a vision for a world which continues to be inspirational even today. They presented us with the 1993 Vienna Declaration, the 1994 Cairo Consensus, and the 1995 Beijing Platform for Action. It is, of course, our deepest hope that these are the inspiring standards that member states in the United Nations will continue to adhere to and use as a basis to forge ahead to greater inclusivity, equality, justice, peace, and sustainability. You who are present here have the same great opportunity as the leaders in that generation to present a post-2015 development framework which will inspire generations to come. If you think that the world is a broken place, through this process, you are able to put in place solutions which you think will be able to build the world we truly want. Indeed, as we have heard before us, more girls are in school, more women are in university, in parliament and in the workforce. Yet substantive gender equality still remains a distant dream for most women and girls. The dream remains most distant for these women who are poor, lesser educated, live in rural and hard-to-reach areas, and belong to marginalized groups. These women still form the majority of the women in the world today. These are the women we should aim never to leave behind in the next 20 years. Despite the chaos of the world we live in, through my work I've always been able to experience that women and girls continue to creatively imagine their futures. Let me share with you one such story which comes from one of our partners, the Asian Rural Women's Coalition. 13-year-old Lina lives in a place of abject poverty in the rural village of Desa Teglampal in East Java. Her father is a landless agricultural laborer. Lina's dreams were almost shattered when one day her mother suggested that she should be married in order to live a more comfortable life. It's poverty that makes people want to quickly marry off their children so that they no longer need to be responsible for them, Lina told us. Her own mother was married at the age of 11 and had Lina when she was just 12 years old. Lina wanted to break the chains of this tradition. She felt that if she had an education, there would be better life opportunities for her. Lina also chanced upon a CSO-led reproductive health education program where she learnt about reproductive health and rights as a teenager. It was from that program that she learned that it was her right to decide when she would get married. After convincing her parents to call off her marriage, and inspired by this experience, Lina and her friends created a youth community campaign against early marriages to empower other girls in the community. They call it Langit Biru, which means blue skies, because it symbolizes hope for the girls. Despite 20 years of implementation of the Beijing Platform for Action, isn't it a travesty we continue to live in a world where girls are prohibited from going to schools? Some have been abducted, some have even been killed or shot at, just simply for seeking an education. Women and girls form the majority of the 1 billion who are hungry and malnourished because they not only lack access to productive resources, but because culturally they eat last in the house when there is already very little food. Poverty and hunger results in nutritional deficiency, which results in anemia, wasting and stunting. This has long-term effects on the overall well-being and health of women and girls, and it is estimated that half of all pregnant women worldwide suffer from iron deficiency anemia, and anemia is one of the contributing reasons for high maternal mortality. Nutritional deficiencies limits girls from fully realizing their potential and impacts educational, health, and social attainments. Women are also unequally impacted by the effects of climate change, and they are on the front lines in coastal communities, on sparse agricultural lands where water and other natural resources are dwindling because they are, of course, the natural resource managers for their households and for their families. Climate change exacerbates existing gender inequalities, and girls and women are at increased risk of dropping out of schools, violence, including sexual violence, exhaustion, and ill health due to the impact of climate change. In recent times, we have also witnessed the unparalleled rise of religious fundamentalism and extremism in all parts of the world. This has led to attempts to roll back significant policy successes in women's rights, both at the national level as well as the international level, where governments cite religious and cultural traditions in order to curb the realization of equality for women. This is a relatively new phenomenon, because 20 years ago, when all member states agreed to Beijing, to Cairo, and to Vienna, we were all still belonging to different faiths, different religions, and different cultures. But 20 years later, women's rights and human rights have suddenly become incompatible with our faiths and cultures. Moreover, in many of these fundamentalist contexts, women's human rights defenders, who remain critical to protecting and preserving human rights, are vulnerable to extreme violence and, sadly, even death. Safety and equal access to justice must be ensured for women's human rights defenders. In recent months, we have also experienced that it is becoming difficult to discuss issues of human rights, especially of sexual and reproductive health and rights, because these topics have become divisive and troublesome to handle during intergovernmental meetings. Clearly, some special interest groups have the luxury of dismissing these troublesome realities of women. We, on the other hand, do not have this luxury. Our NGO partners report that in Pakistan, 75% of women living in rural areas deliver at home and do not have access to emergency obstetric care. In Mongolia, 75% of maternal deaths occur among nomadic herders, unregistered migrants, and unemployed women. In India, 92 women are raped every day, and 1 in every 4 married women experience physical or sexual violence by their husbands. In Nepal, 27% of married women have an unmet need for contraception. In Bangladesh, 128 out of 1,000 adolescent girls gives birth. We need each and every one of you to be able to stand up for the rights of women and girls, not only in your countries, but for all women and girls across the globe. We cannot do this without your support. We must be cognizant of the fact that sexual and reproductive health and rights are inextricable from economic, socio-cultural, and political rights, and must be recognized as necessary ingredients to achieving gender equality, women's empowerment, and sustainable development. Without autonomy over our bodies, we cannot achieve autonomy over our lives. Every individual must have the right to decide whom we can love, whom we can have consensual relations with and when, and whom we can enter into marriage with and when. We must have the right to decide how many children to have, if at all, when to have them, and how frequently. We must have the right to a life free from all forms of discrimination and violence, regardless of sexual orientation and gender identity. These are indeed challenging times for all of us. But challenging times require us to be bold and to be able to vision a future beyond the current turmoil. It requires all of us to rise out of our comfort zones and to commit to forging a path for the future. In all recent post-2015 negotiations, member states have constantly come forward to say that they are looking for a transformative agenda, an agenda which will be able to harness these challenges and yet deliver development solutions to the issues we see proliferating our landscape. How will transformation occur if we are not able to discuss and traverse difficult issues? How will transformation happen if we sink down to the lowest common denominators rather than aspire to the highest ideals? How will transformation take place if we are not able to identify a comprehensive set of actionable indicators which is able to translate the hopes for a visionary agenda into reality? We too, as women's rights organizations, share your desire for a transformative agenda. For us to address these challenges adequately, we must be able to bring not only an economic change, but also social and cultural change to the societies we live in. We must be able to expand our minds and our hearts to include the most marginalized populations into our vision. A country's sustainable development indicators are best reflected in how it takes care of its most marginalized communities and is able to include all key stakeholders, especially those with critical voices. We call upon all governments to join us in our efforts for creating a just, equal, and equitable world which takes into consideration the needs of all its constituencies and values all people. We need a development justice model that will deliver sustainable, just, and equitable development. You and I may not personally benefit from this, but we will know and we will take pride in knowing that we have done our very best to leave a better world, a more equal world for future generations. Thank you.